In this presentation, we're going to talk about some of the finer points of broadcast copywriting, or writing in a broadcast style. Why is it necessary to write in a specific format in broadcasting? Why can't you just write the way we do for print or in our everyday correspondence? Well, for starters, have you ever read off a teleprompter where the text is scrolling across a screen in front of a camera lens when you have lights on you, you have a deadline, you are live, and you have to get the information right the first time? If not, you're going to experience that this semester and see that it is no easy task. If we follow a commonly accepted writing format, it makes it easier for the talent to read on air when they are reading from a teleprompter or when they go from one station to the next. It also you will soon see it helps to avoid confusion in pronunciation, in numbers, in terms, and the like. And finally, because it is a different format from how others write, it helps you build credibility as a professional in broadcasting. So here are 11 generally accepted rules in broadcast writing. Rule number 1, computers and newsroom systems. Most stations type their copy in upper and lower case, particularly in the script, but also often when it appears on the teleprompter. This is debatable, so use what your station prefers. All caps is generally reserved for the video side of your 2-column format script. Again, this is generally accepted. Some stations prefer all uppercase. Numbers. Because you're going to be reading off a teleprompter most of the time, it is important the numbers are clear and easy to read. Therefore, numbers written up through 11 are spelled out, because the number 11 looks like 2 L's. 12 to 999 use numerals. 1000 and up use combinations of numerals and words 3000 and words. Numerals are used for years. You also want to spell out all symbols and spell out fractions and decimal points. Numbers being used in the same way, you're going to spell them the same way. So if the final score is 24 to 10, you're going to use the numbers 24 and 10, not the number 24 and 10 spelled out. Rule number 3 deals with abbreviations. You want to write them as they're supposed to be read, except for titles of personal address, like Mr. and Mrs. So MIAA would be written MIAA, NBA, and FEMA. Note, for unfamiliar organizations, use the full name first and then use the abbreviations. Corrections. Place them in the copy where they are supposed to be read, and there are only 4 acceptable correction symbols, which we'll talk about more in class. But you will use correction symbols for deletions, substitutions of words or words, additions, and major deletions. Rule number 5, don't split sentences onto different pages. If you do this, the newsreader is going to have to turn the page, and that can cause confusion. Sometimes the teleprompter will go out, and you'll have to go to your printed script. If you have to turn the page to get to the next sentence, it can cause a lot of problems. Rule number 6 deals with emphasis. If you want to stress something, indicate it by underlining or typing in all caps. If your station ignores Rule 1 and puts everything in all caps, you'll need to underline because teleprompters don't read bold. Rule 7 deals with spelling. Spell it right. I know nobody else is going to see the script but you and perhaps the person running the teleprompter. But this is going to add to your credibility, and it helps your talent avoid pronunciation errors if you spell correctly. Rule 8 deals with pauses. In this case, use dashes and ellipses because we tend to read right through commas and not take the necessary pause. Ellipses are generally used for commas. Dashes are used to add more effect. They add drama. You can add more dashes because you can show the desired length of the pause by how many dashes are used. And this will add some drama to your sentence. Now you do use commas with dates and such, but if there's supposed to be a deliberate pause, use dashes or ellipses. Rule number 9 deals with pronunciation. Check and indicate difficult pronunciations in the copy. You're going to write these phonetically in parentheses after the correct spelling of the word. The hope is, and this is generally the case, the newsreader will have a chance to go through the script before going on air. Timing. We time all copy. Newspaper copy is measured in inches. Broadcast copy is in seconds. We don't want dead air or silence, and we don't want to run into the next program. In other words, time everything. You'll do this by rule number 11, testing and reading all the copy aloud. It's easier to time it that way. You also can pick up phrases that don't make sense or are confusing. You can pick up hissing, which is a series of S, SH, Z, or soft C sounds, and you can pick up rumble, which is too many R's in a row. Whew, that was a long one. Now you can catch your breath. And now that you know how to type the words, let's talk about how to use them appropriately in broadcasting. The late Jim Zalian, who was news director at KNX in Los Angeles, said good broadcast writing shows ear. Zalian said good news writers hear the copy as they write, rather than just see it. They avoid difficult or unnatural phrasings that may disorient the ear. They search out lively, direct, and fresh language that pleases the ear. Really, they just know what it should sound like and how it's going to be easiest heard by the audience. Remember to speak in common language. Speak in a conversational tone. This isn't print, this is broadcast, and we want you to make the audience feel like they're part of the situation, part of the newsroom with you. Speak directly to them. Don't get verbose or loquacious, and don't speak in an esoteric manner or as a pedantic know-it-all. Or, put more simply, don't be wordy, don't be technical, and don't show off your vocabulary. Here are some rules to live by. Number 1, speak informally. It's man and woman for male and female. Drink for beverage. Said for states or commented. Number 2, speak simply. It's an argument, not an altercation, and you pay, not remunerate. Number 3, avoid journalismese, words like blaze for fire. Print journalists use this so they don't have to write the same phrases over and over again. It is not common language. Others include heist for robbery and nab for catch. Remember, in print, you have 20 inches to tell your story, so you may get tired of saying the same phrase over and over again. In broadcast, you may have 20 seconds. You're only going to say the phrase once, so say it plainly. Rule number 4 is know and be able to explain technical terms. Your rule, translate technical jargon. You don't have time to give the technical term and its definition and the news, so simplify the terms. Rule number 5, know when to use slang. Ain't, can't hardly, etc. are fine for the Hatfields and McCoys, not for broadcast journalists. Also, don't offend. Obscene language, ethnical or racial slurs, and unflattering terms such as cops and shrinks have no place in journalism. And also, don't ham it up. Remember, you are a professional and you must maintain credibility. Now, you can banter and joke back and forth with your co-host, but that needs to come naturally, not as part of your script. Rule number 6, use contractions wisely. Won't, its, and theirs are generally fine for will not, it is, and there is. However, make sure not to de-emphasize what is being said. The quarterback won't be playing is not as strong as the quarterback is not playing. As a broadcast writer, you also want to be engaging in your writing. Here are some useful tips for being engaging. Remember, your news subjects are interesting enough without flowery language. The news speaks for itself, so don't try to get too fancy. Keep it personal. People are listening to you. Talk to them. It is okay to use the informal second person, you, on many occasions. Keep it real. It rained or snowed, not precipitation fell. Fewer cars were produced last month, not automotive production declined last month. Use active verbs. Good broadcast news writing has oomph. The Indianapolis Colts limped out of the box, but came out swinging in the second half to rally past the New England Patriots in the AFC Championship game. See how that's more active? In other words, avoid using adjectives and adverbs to paint more of a picture when an active verb can do the job for you. It's less wordy and more dynamic. Replace the fast-moving linebacker suddenly closed in to force the fumble with the linebacker snatched the ball from the quarterback. And mind your verb tenses. If it is currently happening, use the present tense. It is the most engaging tense in the language. If the Kansas City Chiefs are continuing to search for a viable option at receiver, don't say the Chiefs were looking at all possible options at wide receiver. Remember, timeliness is everything in broadcast journalism. If it happened in the recent past, don't try to make it present by using the present perfect tense, because you can still maintain immediacy. What's unacceptable would be to say a wide receiver is being found. What would be acceptable is the missing receiver has been found. And some final thoughts. Rule number 6, avoid numbers if at all possible and limit them when absolutely necessary. I know this is difficult in sports, but here are a couple tips. First of all, round them off if they are confusing. Averaging 12.8 points per game becomes averaging almost 13 points per game. It's easier to say and easier to hear. Also, make your numbers real. Percentages and phrases like 10 years ago instead of back in 2006, which causes the audience to try to figure out how long ago that was, and ratios like 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio versus 21 assists and just 9 turnovers are much easier to follow. Also use idiomatic expressions, phrases like the coach was beside himself with joy at winning in overtime, or the team soldiered on despite the elements. They bring warmth and color to a story. Use metaphors carefully. A metaphor is when one thing is spoken of as if it were another. The Mules' defensive line was a brick wall, unbending despite wave after wave of big backs breaking against it. Don't use cliches. There are so many in sports it's almost impossible to keep track of them all. Three guidelines to avoiding them: be creative and use your own words. Be honest. Writing should accurately describe the situation. Is it really raining cats and dogs, or is it just a steady drizzle? And keep it simple. Remember, if you are reporting the subject as news, it is already of interest. And finally, as much as possible, avoid interjections. They muddy sentences and are hard to read and difficult to hear. Avoid things like the Jennies, who are second in the MIAA, are now 17-2 overall, 10-2 in conference play. That's better written as the Jennies are currently second in the MIAA. They are 17-2 overall and 10-2 in conference play. Once you master this writing style for broadcasting, you're well on your way to being a solid broadcast copywriter.